So yeah, since the last time I've been here, a lot of stuff going on. You guys know I kind of track this world event stuff. I work from home, so I have the luxury of watching YouTube all day at work, and I'll turn it off if it's something I got to really concentrate on hard. But generally, I can listen to it while I do, minor detail stuff. Plus, AI helps out with that. And so yeah, a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. I don't know if you guys saw that invasion of Spain the other day. I don't know if you guys follow. There's a guy named Dr. David Betts. I didn't know they had experts in Civil War. He's an expert, the #1 expert in Civil War out of King's College in London. And I follow this guy, and he's predicted Europe is going to go into civil war definitely in the next 5 years. Most likely, he said, in the next 2 years. It's already kicking off. They're starting to fight in the streets now. It's getting crazy over there. Most Americans don't follow this stuff. It's mind-boggling to me. The whole world's about collapsing, and they're, I don't know what they're doing. And droughts and floods, droughts and floods. This whole thing about the water. And I was listening to it last night. I forgot the country, so forgive me that it was talking about. But this one country's running out of water, which makes sense because they're saying that we're going through a global heat wave. Heat's increasing. Have you noticed it's hotter? And now, truthfully, the liberals say, well, it's all global warming. I think as usual, I don't know why this is always the case. It's always something in between. I think it's a third of what they say, a third of just natural cyclical changes in the environment, and a third God's judgment. That's the way I look at it. I could be wrong. If anybody disagrees, that's fine. I'm not an expert and I'm not a scientist. But it is getting hotter. It's getting hotter. It's good for my kids. They all do heating and air, so they're loving it. And the wars, like in the 80s, when me and Art used to run together, we believe it or not, we thought the rapture was any day now in the 80s. Now looking back, I think, what in the world were we thinking? I mean, it was great in the 80s and 90s. There was nothing going on other than the Iraq War. But now, we got this Russia thing. I don't know if you guys watch the footage of that stuff. It's crazy what's going on. The drones and all that craziness, and it ain't getting any better. And then they're providing weapons to Ukraine. So Ukraine's saying we might attack NATO countries, and then that Article 14 or whatever it is kicks in, and we got to get. We're on the brink of something. I'm not going to get up here like I've done in the past, like a fool, and say I'm sure it's going to be this day. But 26 is not over yet, so I'm still in the mix. Gangs roving Europe, attacking people. Those 30,000 migrants that they let in Spain, they've got a lunatic running the country, this liberal lunatic. They were raping and invading houses, and the Spanish about had enough of it. And by the way, my take on this thing with Europe is, if you look at the pattern in the Old Testament, when God brings judgment on a country or an individual or a household, it always follows the same pattern. But when it was countries, if you look over at Israel, he would allow these countries to come in, take over, kill them, rape them, take everything. Europe, I lived in Europe 5 years. They're the most ungodly countries you've ever been in. I mean, you think it's hard witnessing here. Everybody there's an atheist. Oh, you run into a Christian in England that's where I lived. I mean, it was a big deal. Really? So you got some Christians over here, huh? These people. So I think they're under judgment. I do. And I look at my life when I came under judgment, when I backslid many years ago. I lost a lot. I was sitting there. I don't know how, I can't go to any type of function for some reason without looking at it through a spiritual lens. And I was sitting there in the wedding. I was on the front row last night. And I'm thinking, and I hadn't seen they didn't do a pastor. It was a guy named Paul Telemontes. Y'all might have heard of them. They used to own all the karate schools here, and he's a good friend of the family. He was a judge here. The Telemontes, good people. Not Christians, but nice people. And I hadn't seen this guy in years, and I didn't recognize him. He'd aged, And it woke me up at how fast time moves. Yep. Moves. I came back, like I've said this before, when I came back from Atlanta, and first guy I called was Art. I stayed in touch with Art over the years to some degree. And I was sitting down with Art. I said, well, where's so-and-so? And what happened to so-and-so? And where's this guy? And where's that guy? And Art, well, that one's dead. And, this one's backslidden. And that one we don't know. And it was freaky. Not a good word. It was weird not to how it just amazes me. I mean, I've got one foot in the grave. I'm 62. I'm on the way out, or as I say, I'm up to bat. Yeah, and that's how I get them convicted in my family. We're talking about my mother's ex-wife's mother. We just called her Juanita, and they're all dead now. We used to go over there every Friday night, and I used to love it. They lived over there by Edison, and that beautiful breeze would come through, and I'd sit there with my father-in-law, and he'd be watching that, what is it, Sábado Dominguez or something? Remember that show? It was on Telemundo, and it was out of Mexico, but he'd be watching. It was just wonderful. Gringos, we don't have a lot of family stuff, and that's the thing I loved about being married to a Latina is family, and she would get so mad because we go over every Friday night. I grew up there. It's not a big deal to me. And every Friday, I just want to go over there and hang out with her family. And communism. Have you seen this thing with all these social democrats taking? They're winning all over the country, and they're all a bunch of communists. And I never thought I'd see the day. That's a big deal because they hate Christ. One thing they do. And then the UFO thing. You guys been following that? I mean, look, put all this stuff together as I bring it out. I mean, there's a lot of weird things going on in the world. And I'm going to hit on that UFO thing real quick. I know I've done it before, but you should be out warning people about this. I think I told you in the past, and I'm going to get into the text here really quick as soon as I get through this little introduction. But when this whole UFO thing started, I was in Atlanta, and the Israeli prime minister retired. And he came, no, he wasn't the prime minister, forgive me, he was the self-defense minister. He came out and said, look, we've been dealing with these atheists and these aliens for a long time. Oh, yeah, we're working with them. They can't do anything to me now, so I'm going to tell the truth about it. And he wrote a book about it, and that prompted me to do a deep dive on this subject. But by the way, on a side note, as soon as he wrote that book, he disappeared. Nobody's heard from him. Have you heard about the 25 scientists that were working on the UFO and they all died? Yeah, there's something going on. So long story short, so I can get into the text, the top guy in the world on UFOs is a guy named Jacques Laval. He's this French guy. He's not a Christian. I think he's an agnostic. And there were about 5 things I picked up on reading his books. Number one, everybody that got abducted, he interviewed 250 people. They all said they smelled sulfur in the spaceship. Sulfur's from the center of the earth. Odd thing, right? From some. Number 2, they did really, excuse me for being graphic, really brutal sexual sadistic stuff to people. They're not nice. The aliens are not nice, right? Number 3, all they wanted to talk about was Jesus. Now that really stuck out. Why would these UFOs travel millions of light years to talk about Jesus? Why not Buddha? Why not Muhammad? And they wanted to tell people, don't believe what the Bible says about him. He's not a guy. He was a good guy. Real smart guy, but he wasn't who he said he was. Well, that tells me all I need to know. And then 4th, every time, the only people that could stop the abduction is that were Christians when in the name of Jesus, they stopped it. If you mention Jesus' name, they fled. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. This doesn't sound like rocket science to me. I mean, these are obviously demonic. But here's the interesting thing. Jacques Laval came to the conclusion, as an unbeliever, that these things were demonic. And he compared them to demon possession in the medieval days. Because back in those days, there was more demon. Now we're seeing it again. We're starting to see a lot of demonic activity in the world now. I follow that as well. And as a close on the intro, the occult. I was reading an article the other day. 70 to 80% of young girls are in the occult. Makes sense biblically. I'm not picking on women, so don't ladies get mad at me. But women are a little more susceptible to this kind of thing. This is why God put the men in charge of the house, because they do have a tendency to get into. If you look at the young men, the younger men are actually coming back to God now. There's a wave of young. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them become Catholics and Greek Orthodox, but they're coming back in that direction, just the wrong direction in a lot of cases. And then the women are becoming more rebellious. And a lot of that has to do with feminism and stuff like that as well, because they don't like what the Bible says. I mean, if you really interpret the Bible, what it says about marriage and the house and God, it says in 2 Timothy, the wife is to be a keeper of the home. And she's to teach the young kids to fear God. I'm paraphrasing it. And to be like Abraham's wife. And a friend of mine goes to a church in Kerrville recently, and they had a graduation for all these high school kids, and he said he was in shock because like 20 of these young, good wholesome kids, and I'm not picking on these kids, but they they got up to the mic and they were, I'm going to Texas A&M, or I'm going to UTSA. And they did say some good stuff. He said, like, I'm going to get involved in ministry and all that. But the thing that struck me was not one of them said, I'm going to find me a good, godly man and get married and have a family. Not one of them. And the church is endorsing this. And some of you look shocked. And you know what? That's the age we live in. To actually say that women should do what God said to do shocks people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, that they shouldn't. And by the way, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm not saying women can't. We're talking about your wonderful daughter. I mean, I have granddaughters. I'm not going to say, you can't go to college or whatever. But, go to college, but with the intent of finding a godly man, graduate and get married and have kids and do the God thing. It's not that difficult. There's ways around this thing. But I didn't hear any of that, from what he said, And luckily, my daughter-in-law from Monterey, she's a ceramic engineer, which is, my undergrad is engineering, and I barely made it through it. And I was an industrial engineer. A ceramic engineer is like a rocket scientist. But she decided to stay home. She goes, I'm going to stay home. We're going to have kids. Yeah, godly, very godly girl. Not of our flavor, but I'll take it. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I guess the question is always, when I watch it, what do we do with all this stuff? I mean, what effect should this have on us? We don't know the exact day of the rapture. I think it's close, but I could be wrong. So that's what I want to do today. I want to kind of appeal to the scriptures and kind of get us, if we're not, any of us are not on track, to get us back on track. I know I fall off track all the time. And as I've said in the past, when I preach to you guys or teach, as Brother Minnow says, I'm preaching to myself. Right? And I mean that. I'm not joking. I'm not doing that to get off the hook. Say, I want to go in there and blast them up. I'll just say I'm doing it to me. That way they won't get mad at me. It's not what I'm doing. Okay? I'm constantly checking myself, constantly looking at myself. Every encounter I have, I used to call like Art all the time. Art, you think I was too rough on this guy? Because I don't want to be the mean Baptist. The one thing I don't want to be is the mean Baptist. We got so many of those guys in our movement, they drive me nuts. They just insult everybody there is, and they think they're being godly, and they're not. There's nothing godly about that. They should be loving and Christ-like. You can tell a guy he's going to go straight to hell and burn like a fried chicken, and you can do it lovingly. I know, because I've done it. Yeah, and they'll take it well when you do it that way. They'll take it well. But when they pick up on that we're being mean or mean-hearted, spirited. It's one thing I like about this. I'm going back and doing another Bible degree. I found this wonderful school called the King James Bible Institute, and it's completely free. If you want to do a Bible study and you want a structural way of doing that, and I think if I was a pastor, I would be promoting this school. You want to because I hear that from Christians a lot. They'll come to me and say, I want to study, but I don't know what to study and where should I start? Do it. It's free. You sign up, takes you 5 minutes. You go through each course. It has an easy 20 question thing at the end of it. You can get your associate, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in theology for free. And it's the best Bible school I've gone to. It's better than the one I got my doctorate from. And it's King James, big time, fundamental Baptist, the whole 9 yards. But the guy's got a really good spirit about him, very loving guy. He knows how to say stuff. Now once in a while he'll get on a tirade, but overall, a pretty good guy. So let's look at the first verse with me. Look at Romans 13:11. You guys probably thought I was skipping over the Bible verses, huh? But we're going to look at this verse. Romans 13:11. 13. I checked my verses last night to make sure that I got the right ones. And I was telling Minnow, there's nothing more embarrassing. Tell somebody look at a verse and you got the wrong verse. Whoa, that one's rough. I did that a couple times here. I turned red and got some sweat coming down. So I checked them out. Romans 13:11. In that knowing the time that now is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than we ever believed. I didn't put verse 12. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. I'm going to finish the rest of it. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting, in drunkenness, in chambering. Chambering is one of them wonderful old English words. One thing I love about the King James, I love these old words. Chambering, it's basically, it's... Yep, shacking up. I was trying to find a nice way of saying it, and Brother Minnow helped me out there. And wantonness, and not in strife and envying, jealousy, and put ye on the Lord Jesus, and make, look at this, man, I love these words, and make no provision, not a little bit, not a tiny bit, no provision for the flesh to fulfill the lusts thereof. So, when Paul said this was way back in the first century, right? He says now is the time, to wake up and out of our sleep. And I've noticed that in my Christian walk. It's a constant battle to do this because we get so caught up in the world, don't we? Now, there's some stuff we have to do. We have to pay bills and take care of rowdy grandkids and as Art was saying, keep working. I'm like Art, I'm going to be working until I drop. I got to do it. I wish I could do full-time ministry, but it's not in the cards, or at least at this point in my life. And we have to do that. But that's the struggle. That's the challenge. How do we take care of the basic stuff that we have to take care of and to be no more caught up in the world outside of that? And this is going to get me in trouble. I know this is on film because I got to be careful with these modern Christians, not you guys, but they get mad as a hornet, when I say this. But I've come to the conclusion of studying the Bible all my life, and this is my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. I'll take a rebuke. You guys know me. I don't think God really wants us to have to. I think Christ is supposed to be our hobby outside of the stuff we have to take care of.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I believe that in a much different view. Maybe because I read old stuff like Spurgeon and the Puritans, and I look at how they looked at things compared to the church look now. And I get beat up by Christians for saying this. Oh, they come at me like a hornet, man, when I tell them, well, you shouldn't be involved in that, brother, out in Kerrville. You should spend your free time evangelizing the world, and you shouldn't be. I was looking at that Spurs thing. We out in Kerrville, we all got a big kick out of it when the Spurs won that championship game. Do you see all them crazy fools down there hanging out of the cars and people getting shot and screaming? I'm like, I pray to God there's no Christian in that crowd. If they're that excited about a stupid basketball game and they don't get that excited about the things of God, woo-wee, that's not good. I hope there wasn't any in that crowd. I really do. I'm not saying you can't like the Spurs and be happy. I could care less if the Spurs and the Cowboys never lost or won another game or won the championship. I asked the Lord a couple years ago, to take my desire, because I was wrapped up in college football, take that from me. Now, what I'll do, I kind of struck a balance. I'll watch the highlights, the 7-minute highlights on YouTube late at night. But I haven't sat through an entire football game. I don't remember how long it's been. I get bored real quick. He answered my prayer. He did. He'll answer your prayers. I just recently had surgery. I had hernia surgery, and I tell you, I was scared to death. The idea of having some guy open me up, put me to sleep, and I don't know what that guy's doing. And I started hyperventilating in the doctor's office when he said, yeah, you're going to have surgery. So I prayed for 5 days prior to that. And I said, Lord, please give me a peace. Give me a peace. I couldn't sleep. And he gave me this wonderful, miraculous peace. And I went in there. I took me a Watchman Nee book, sitting in there. I'm reading that book. And a weird thing came out of this I'm going to tell you about. I'm reading the book, and I'm at peace. And then they took me into the next scary room, where they wash you down and all that. And you can kind of see the rooms and people getting wheeled out. And you're like, oh, man. So I'm reading again. And the nurse said, you don't seem real nervous. You're really getting into that book. And I used it as a chance to witness. I said, yeah, I've read this book for years, and it's really deep. A lot of it I didn't understand. But I think because I'm going into a situation where I could not come out of, my spirit is heightened. I'm more spiritual than I normally would be. Because, when you're about to die, you get real spiritual. You know what I mean? Yeah, real spiritual. All of a sudden, believe me, they want to hear about the things of God when they're about to open them up with a scalpel, pull some stuff out. Yeah, you'll get spiritual. And they rolled me back, and I saw them rooms, and they were mopping the floors, and the flesh got a hold of me a little bit. Said, I wonder if they're mopping, blood squirting out of people. What's going on? And they put me in there, and I said my last prayer. I said, Lord, take my hand. And I put my hand out, and that's when the chemical junk hit me, and I was out. And I woke up, funny story, I told the nurse, I said, wow, I was hoping I was going to get to see Jesus like all these people that have these near-death bed things. And she goes, oh, you don't want that. And I said, why is that? She goes, when that happens, you're on the way out. That's what she said. And I said, and I got, you got a point. But, she told me that I said that 3 times before I came out of anesthesia. She goes, you've been saying that since you came out, that you wish you would have seen Jesus. I don't remember saying any of that, and that's what I was worried. I was going to say something crazy. But we got to wake up. We have to stay awake. And I get caught up in this myself because my life is so busy. I get caught up in the things of the world. And by the way, I am not saying you are under grace. If you want to watch a football game, watch it. I'm not judging people for doing that. I'm just saying I'm 62 years old. I'm on the way out. I don't have time to be messing around with foolishness. I've spent most of my life in foolishness. And I want to get out there. I want to build some rewards for Christ. I want to evangelize. I want to lay tracks. I want to make a difference in the world. Thinking about that movie, Christmas Carol, Scrooge. Anybody ever see that? He got in there with Scrooge that night. Scrooge was that greedy guy. All he thought about was money and business. And it's a movie. But it's a secular movie, granted. But I'll never forget that one line. He said, "Your business was mankind. That's your business." And one of the things we fundamental Baptists are about is sometimes we get so caught up in our, that we preaching the gospel to people, which we should do. That's our primary thing when we encounter a person. We should never have a conversation that doesn't end on Christ. But there's also just being kind to people, helping people, comforting people, widows. One of the, widow. How many churches now? It's a church's responsibility to take care of a widow if she was faithful. If she was a faithful widow, the church should help her out monetarily. I've never been in a church that did that. I've never seen it. Imagine that. She's got a widow and they're going to put her on a stipend so she get $200 a month. Technically, it's the way it's supposed to be. Church I go to out in Kerrville, they had a fellow that fell into fornication. They put that old boy up on the front row and rebuked him. Yeah, they followed that church discipline. I told my son about that. He said, I wouldn't have showed. That's what he said. He goes, he ain't sticking me up there. I mean, you imagine if we did all the stuff the Bible said to do, they'd run us out of town. Rebuking people at the stage, spending money, taking care of widows and all that. I mean, there's so much stuff in here that kind of seeped out over the years, But yeah, we got to do. So look at me at Luke 21:34. And I'm going to hit you with some verses. But y'all Baptists, so, you can handle it. You get in a charismatic church, sometimes they don't like going to all these verses. There's some good ones out there that, not when I say good, I don't mean doctrines, but I've got some charismatic friends that love the Word. They're on the right road going the wrong way. Luke 21:34. Look at this. Luke, I hear them pages, I'll give you a few extra seconds. Luke 21:34. And take heed to yourselves, lest in any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, that's excess, and drunkenness, and the cares of this life, so that day come upon you unaware. This is what we don't want. Let me tell you what we don't want. We don't want to be plowing through life, caught up in this world, and find out we got a brain tumor. And all of a sudden we got to do a reshuffle. You know how many times that happens to people? That's my fear. I'm caught up in the world in foolishness, and I find out I got 3 months left to live. And I wish I'd have did this, and I wish I'd have spent more time with my kids, and I wish I'd have soul win more. I wish I'd have laid more tracks. I wish I'd have prayed more. I wish I'd have read more. We want to be in that constant state of readiness at all time as a Christian. And I'm not there. That's good. I ain't preaching. I'm not rebuking none of y'all. Trust me. I told Minnow the other day, I talk to this guy every day. They'll probably drive him nuts. And I said, I did a life survey of my life recently. How much of my 62 years of life do I feel good about as a Christian? And let me qualify for if there's any Pharisees that are going to be watching this on YouTube. I'm not saying that I would walk a perfect life, but how many days or months out of my entire life can I say I'm not going to use the word proud, that's a bad word, but that I feel, what's a good word? I feel comfortable. I feel like I was a good Christian. I came up with a month. 1 month that I personally feel good about. And even then, I'm sure I could have got sliced and diced with the, but I don't like that. That bothers me. I look back over my life, the mistakes I made and the things I've done, the sins I've committed. So we have to be in that constant state. And the problem is, I've learned over the years as an old Christian, it takes discipline, like the sister was talking about, structure and discipline. Because we'll get caught up in those cares and we forget. It's so easy to get caught up in it, right? And it's almost like we have to remind ourselves every morning when we do our morning devotional, God, do not let me get caught up, worried over nonsense, things that are passing away. Let me focus on you. Let me focus on evangelism. Let me focus on my family. Outside of God, our family is the second most important thing. And then the third tier would be our brothers and sisters, right? And, actually, I'd put them in tier 2 as well. Because if you have an unsaved relative, and people don't like hearing this, but you have a brother in Christ. If I have to choose between Art and my real brother, who's not, he's actually saved. Let's say he wasn't saved. I'd side with Art. Art's my true brother in Christ. But you guys know what I mean, though. Your physical family, because people pass and they die, and some of them might not be saved, and that's another thing I worry about. I was at the wedding. I'm looking around and all my family, and I'm thinking, I wonder, I hope they're all saved. I wish I had that ability, like a lot of Christians, to just go to stuff and not think like that. Just enjoy the moment. I'm wired weird. Like, I think about everything in a spiritual sense. I'm enjoying my son's wedding. I'm looking at my wonderful daughter-in-law. She was a beautiful girl, smiling and crying as they're doing their vows. But at the same time, and then my little granddaughter came up with the rings and did that, and I'm thinking, man, time is flying. I need to spend more time with these people. But most importantly, I said to myself, I need to start praying and fasting more. So I'm not one of these parents. This gets another thing. I get everybody upset. Another thing is, I'm never going to be one of these parents to say, my son went up to the altar and got saved, and he's saved, and I move on. I don't move on. I pray every day that my kids, this is my prayer, Lord Jesus, if any of them are not truly regenerated, I want you to save them before, and I'll never rest on that. And I'm a fundamental Baptist. I'm working on my second fundamental Baptist degree. I'm as Baptist as you get, but I upset them all. I'm the renegade. I'll come in there, because I'm not a traditionalist with a big T. I'm a small T traditionalist. I'm into tradition. I like the traditions of being a Baptist, but if it's wrong, it's wrong. Yep. I'm not following that mess, and that upsets them, because they got a lot of tradition. Minnow knows I just had a real big-time encounter out there at the Baptist church that I was going to in Kerrville. Guy got up there and looked me straight in the eye and said, we're talking about the new birth, regeneration. He said, people get saved. That doesn't mean their life's going to change. And I said, whoa, rewind that one for me, brother. And I'm by the altar after church, and I'm not a solid person there. I mean, I've moved around a little. I'm not technically a member, so I got to be careful what I say. I said, you mean to tell me a guy can get saved and his life doesn't change? He doesn't fall in love with God's word? Initially. Yeah. I'm not saying people can't backslide. We've all done it. But initially, that guy got saved and he woke up the next day, he was the same guy or girl or woman or man, whatever. Really? That brother looked me straight in the eye and said, yeah. Wow. I didn't know what to do with that one. I'm never at a loss of words. I mean, I did the moonwalk back, Yeah. And then I was a dispensationalist, and they're not dispensationalists, and they think that's a heresy. I had never encountered that. I mean, I know people don't agree with dispensation. That's dispensationalism up there. I know a lot of people don't agree with it, but I had never heard a guy say it's heresy. I was like, heresy? Really? I got to admit, the flesh got me, and it's a good example of what I'm talking about. The flesh I wanted to slice and dice this guy with that book so quick. But I didn't do it. I stayed cool, stayed calm. Witnessed to a Catholic priest the other day in the parking lot at HEB. Oh, I got to tell you this one before I move on. How much time I got? You got to hear this one. Oh, man, I got 10 minutes. I got to really move. This Catholic priest, I asked him about the Inquisition. And he used to be a Christian, he says, and now he's a priest. And so I said, you reckon God's going to be okay with all them 15 million Christians y'all burned at the stake? You know what that guy told me? Y'all think I'm making this up? He said, yeah. They left the Catholic Church. They deserve to burn.
Wow.
What do you think I said to them? You know what I told him? I said, at least you're honest. That was my answer. I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know what do you say to that? I mean, I don't know what the right response to that one is. Yeah, look at 2 Peter. I got to move at Mach 4 here. 2 Peter 3:11-14. Unless he gives me a courtesy 10-minute bonus since we started 10 minutes late.
No English.
We started 10 minutes late. I'm pulling rank.
I'll give you 10 more.
All right, I can do it in 10. All right, I'll do it in 10. 2 Peter 3:11-14. Boy, this is a good one right here. As they say in Georgia, where I'm from. 2 Peter 3:11-14. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons, look at this, ought we to be in holy conversation and godliness? In other words, the way we talk all day. Woo, you can tear me up on that one. I'd mess up on that one. Looking for the hastening of the coming of our day, the heavens being on fire will be dissolved, the elements will melt. We're getting close to that. Nevertheless, we according to this promise look for a new heaven, new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, look at this, diligent. I have that highlighted in my Bible. Things. Be diligent that you may be found in him in peace, without spot and blameless. So he doesn't say that you be found 70% on track, 30% off track. He uses these strong words, right? Without spot and blameless. So that's a question we got to ask ourselves, and I'm the first one to guilty. Would the people we know in our lives and we work with say, yeah, that Anthony boy, he's blameless and spotless. Yeah, boy, he's about as perfect as you get as a Christian. That's the question. Or would they say, well, yeah, they're Christians, but they're a lot of fun too, though. They make exceptions on the weekend. They come over and I don't want that spot. And I've met one guy my whole life that I would say he was a retired dentist named Dr. Bob at church when I was in Atlanta. I couldn't find nothing on this fella. Not that I was looking. But this boy, he was straight. The only thing I ever saw was, you know how the devil flips the script? When you get a guy like, what's he going to do to a guy like that who's spotless and blameless? And which we should be. I'm not saying don't be spotless and blameless. If he can't get you, if you're so rock solid as a Christian, what's he going to do? He's going to fill you with pride, right? Well, I caught the guy one day kind of bragging about how he, and I didn't judge him. It actually made me feel better because I thought the guy was an angel. I said, well, this guy I just got around this guy. I got convicted. His wife died, and he. Now this is not a big deal in this day and age, though people seem to think it is. But his wife died, and he said he stayed celebrant for 8 years till he met his next wife. Now that's the way it's supposed to be biblically, right? But how many people do we know that? They said the rates of fornication within the church now is as high as it is on the outside. Yeah, I hardly ever run into single. You always know when you run into them because they'll say, "Yeah, well, this is my girlfriend." What do you mean your girlfriend? Really? Amen, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you technically couldn't have a girlfriend, but we all know what that means, right? Right? When they have a girlfriend, yeah, it's not like they're, Well, we date under chaperone. Brother Minnow's with us when we're alone. Yeah, it's funny out there in that home I work in, they had a couple that got engaged. And they, believe it or not, they're a bunch of charismatics, but they're real strict. And if you date before you're married, you have to have a chaperone with you at all times. So they picked this little guy. He used to be a big drug dealer down in South Texas named, his name escapes me for a minute. I'm getting old. But he's a funny guy, just an odd guy. And so they sent him one day with them to have dinner. And if you knew the guy, it's funny that he had to sit there while they're talking romantically and listen. So it's comical to some. But yeah, we live in such a weird time. That's weird. If you say that to people, they look at you like you're half crazy. Yep. What? They dated for 3 years, never slept together? And they're like, wow, that's weird. Yep. Christians will say that. Yeah. I have to take a step back and again, well, maybe they're, is it weird? But, and by the way, I was backslidden for years. I can't say I was that spotless. Yep. I wasn't. But I want to be. I want to be. I'm not doing that kind of stuff anymore. But that's what Christ says of us. He wants us to be spotless and blameless. So ask ourselves, who do we know? Do we know anybody spotless or blameless? I know I'm not on the list. But we have to be careful. Yep. We have to be careful. I'm going to tell you why. Listen carefully to this. because Satan will trick us into thinking that we are holy because we acknowledge we're not spotless and blameless. Like, I'll get on the phone with Brother Minnow sometime. I'm just a lowly sinner, Brother Minnow, and I'm struggling, and this and that. It's really not an excuse. What I'm doing is I'm making an excuse for not living right. I'm saying, well, because I profess it to my best friend, Brother Minnow, that God's going to let me off the hook on this and say, well, yeah, you're right. No, what God wants me to do is be spotless and blameless. That's really what it is. There's no excuses. We all know the other side. Christ is loving, gentle, kind, but he has that other side, and I don't want to be dealing with that. I've already been chastised in my life before. All right, so I'm making good time. I got 10 minutes left. So we have to. What I'm doing is I'm saying there's an urgent call to be holy. That should be one of the themes in our lives, to try to live a holy life and be blameless. Sometimes we can witness to people without even opening our mouth. My boss is a really smart attorney and an atheist and all that, and I work very hard for him, and I can rarely get a witness in because I'm in a very formal environment as an adjuster. But recently I told him, he thanked me for something or another, and I said, well, I'm a Christian. I like working here, but even if I didn't, I would still we're required to be good employees. That was my witness. That little thing got his attention. It got his attention. He thought about it, and that's true. And that's the way we got to be. So look at here, 1 Corinthians 15:58. 1 Corinthians 15:58. And I'm going to move as fast as I can. 1 Corinthians 15:58. I had a debate recently with a Greek Orthodox elder, a YouTube debate, and I had 3 minutes around. 3 minutes around for my rebuttals. You don't know how fast 3 minutes flies. Yep. Woo! Man, you got to be on your feet. 1 Corinthians 15:58. And this hour here goes by. Look at this one. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast. Man, these words, are you guys picking up on these words? Steadfast, right? Non-wavering. Be steadfast, unmovable. Always, there's another one of those words. Always abounding in the work of the Lord, for so much as ye know your labor is not in vain. And that's good. God's saying, look, I want you to be this way. It's going to be tough. It's a tough walk. Always diligent, always blameless, always abounding in the work of God. But it's not in vain. Yeah. Our rewards are based on that. Amen. And God, I don't want to sound like a charismatic, but God blesses our lives when we are faithful to Him. Yeah. You want your business to go good? You want your marriage to go good? You want all of that to go good? Be faithful, be spotless, be abounding. Make Christ your hobby. I don't have people say to me all the time, well, what do you do? You're single, you got 2 cats. I got one hobby. Christ. That's my only hobby. I'm not interested in that. Now, I'll tell you when I do get interested in the world is when I stop reading the book and I stop praying and all that. Then all of a sudden these things start looking exciting to me again. I start missing it. I won't be down there in downtown hanging out of a car yelling for the Spurs. Yeah, half drunk. I'll tell you what, boy, that was a sight to see. These folks, boy, you would have thought they won the lotto. Look, if I'm not on the payroll, put the Bible aside for a minute. If I'm not on the payroll, I ain't getting that excited about nothing outside of family and God. Hanging out of the car, and people getting shot and beat up, and people grabbing and rubbing on folk, and all kinds of weird junk going on down there. I was like, what in the world? And they went berserko, and then they didn't win the championship. Yeah. So James 4:4. Boy, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. This is, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore would be a friend of the world is an enemy of God. That's one of the things that stops us from being spotless and blameless and diligent, is we fall in love with the world. I had a friend of mine recently, this old boy is something. He went to a big family get-together, kind of like I was at last night. He's sitting around the table with peripheral friends, straight family friends, and all these different people. And he does this deliberately. But he has a good heart. He's not doing this to be judgmental. He's trying to motivate Christians. So he knew that some of them in there professed Christ. So he started talking about how he was backslidden and how now he doesn't do those things. He doesn't drink anymore. He doesn't go to bars. He doesn't go to clubs. And he said you should have seen the look on all their faces. every one of them fell under a mass conviction. Yeah, but he really does. I know this brother. He has a good heart. He's doing it to get them to pull out of the world and get back in the game. I hate to use a colloquial phrase like that. Not the game. Get back in the mix. Get back in the work of the Lord. Be diligent. And he noticed that the more he talked about the things of God and the deep things of God, the more excited they got. It's like they want to be that way. They want to be that way. But Christians are so caught up. I mean, Christians are so worldly now. It's just unbelievable, the stuff. I mean, I got a relative went to a secular concert, a Usher concert. I know all about Usher. Back when I was backslidden, I was in the club, Friday nights. I know who Usher is. I know what he talks about. And her husband's a pastor. Her and her husband went to see an Usher concert. How far backslidden and worldly would you be to go to an Usher concert? I'm not talking about you, sister, because I do not visualize you at an Usher concert. I don't know why, but I just don't. But Usher?
I would have heard the name.
Yeah, here's one you might have heard of. I got another friend. His daughter went to a Pink concert. Pink's pro-homosexual and throws out homosexual pro-materials. But I don't know what I'm missing. Yeah, I know what the early church taught. I've talked about that before in here. I know what they said about the world. Now, some of y'all got a little tiffy with me about that, but I wasn't telling you to do that. I was just telling you what they taught. Let me show you how the early Christians lived, and I'll show it to you if you really want to see it. We have their writings from the first century. We know. And by the way, Brother Minnow's right. I mean, these are people. They're not, we go by this. So I'm not saying this is how we have to live. Early Christians, you couldn't play sports, couldn't be a coach, couldn't serve in the military. If you messed up and fell in sin, they rebuked you or kicked you out of the church. They wouldn't listen to secular music. They wouldn't go to any secular entertainment. They said that's of the world. That's not ours. There's a famous inner dialogue going on between a Roman politician and a famous Christian. And they're going back, and this Roman guy is telling them, I'll bring it one day and let you read it. He's saying, well, how come you guys don't get involved? How come you don't run for office? How come you don't go to the Colosseum and watch the fights? And the guy, and it really convicted me listening to this Christian back then. He's saying, because that's your world. I'm paraphrasing it. That's your world. That's what y'all fight for. Let this world burn. This is what he literally said. He goes, let this world burn. We don't care. That's what he said. That's the standard that they had. I mean, and again, don't anybody get mad at me now. I'm not saying you got to be that way. I'm making good time because I'm on the last paragraph. Yep, I got 7 minutes. So yeah, tell you the minutes fly by.
Where's that Baptist?
So I talked about what's going on in the world, what we do with it, a call to holiness. I talked about standing firm in spiritual warfare. I'm going to skip over the spiritual. We all know Ephesians 6. It was bore you half to death reading it probably because we've read it all 1,000 times. So my last point is what do we do with all this? Well, we need to, I'm not going to read this verse. I'm going to read one and I'm not. So I was going to go to 2 Timothy 4:2. But what he's saying there is to Timothy, he's saying, preach the word in season, out of season. You know what that means? I remember that verse sometimes. There's days I don't feel like I'm not in season. I don't feel right doing nothing godly. And that verse always pricks my conscience and says, okay, well, yeah, you got the flu and, you're low on money this week, but that's no excuse. Get out there and do it. And there's a real cool story. I'll make it really brief. I'll do an AI summary on this. There's this Jewish guy that a Christian was so patient. He witnessed to this guy for like 5 years every day online. And this Jewish guy, his dad was a Jewish Orthodox rabbi, came to Christ. He lost everything. He had a job. I mean, he was rolling in the money. He ended up sleeping on the beach with his wife. He had an Asian wife, and So he cried out to God, and he said, God, why did you? I came to you. I did. I accepted. They called Jesus Yeshua. I accepted Yeshua, and I've lost everything. I mean, is this what happens when you follow you? And you know what he said? God spoke to him. I assume he doesn't mean audibly, but you know how when God impresses something on your spirit, brother, that God said, witness. Get out there. So he started witnessing on the beach and passing out tracts. And he got a check in the mail from a dead relative like 2 weeks later of like 200,000 or something. I'm not making this up. I'll send it to you if you want to hear it. And now he's a famous Messianic rabbi in Israel, and all he does is go to the Wailing Wall and witness to Jews. Yeah, I mean, but he was diligent. And that's, and I believe that. I honestly, sister, I believe if we spend every second of our free time, and I'm going to throw a caveat in there, that God will bless us. And if we try to be holy and spotless and everywhere we go and never have conversation, we should never be in a bank talking about the Dallas Cowboys or something, in the line. I'm not saying you can't talk about it. I mean, I'll talk about A&M in the line, but I make sure I end up on Jesus, so I tie it in somewhere. I had a friend tell me that one time. He goes, brother, no matter what you're talking about, somehow or another, you can always tie it into Jesus. He goes, I don't know how you do that. But there's always a way, Yeah, the quarterback's a Christian. Or whatever, you know what I mean? You get it. There's always a way to do it. But we will look at this verse, and then I'm done. I'll do my summary. Philippians 2:15. My summary will be quick. Working against the time. Yeah, and that debate, man, I couldn't believe it. I had so much to say. 3 minutes. Can you imagine how quick 3 minutes go? That's fast. I mean, you can flick a tick faster than that, But it went well, that debate. Guy refused to put it on YouTube afterwards after he agreed to do it. Philippians 2:15. Look at this one. That ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. That sounds like the world we live in now, right? Among whom ye shine as lights. This is our goal. We should be a light everywhere we go. They should say, oh, he's different. She's different. Oh, you're not going to rattle him. You're not going to tempt him with that mess. He won't do it. Very rare do I ever feel good as a Christian, but I had something that did make me feel a little good. Is there was something that somebody that knew one of my sons said about me, and they were going to try to get me into something that I shouldn't get into, and my son said he told him, oh, he ain't going to do that. Well, that made me feel good, because I usually do mess up and do that, you know what I mean? But he had confidence that at least I wouldn't, and so, but believe me, I'm not saying I shine as a light, but that's our goal, right? Diligent, pure. I mean, the requirement is it's not a part-time gig. I mean, it's not like, well, I'm a pretty good Christian, but I got a few this and that, and, we are to be spotless and blameless. And I don't want to stand at the judgment seat of Christ. I know I'm saved, but I don't want to walk in there like this. I want to be able to look Christ in the eye and say, yeah, that last year, at least the last year, I really served you the best I could, I mean, I got a month. There's 1 month out of 62 years of life. That's not good. You know what I mean? So, and the way to do this stuff, and then I've got my summary here. The way to do this stuff is we have to ask ourselves these questions. We have to be honest with ourselves. Would my friends say I'm spotless and blameless? Would they say I'm diligent about the Lord's work? Would they say I'm obsessed with Christ? Would they say that every time I have a conversation, do I talk about Christ? I learned that from Paul Washer years ago. He said all these parents would come in and say, oh, I'm worried about my kids. I'm wondering if they're saved. How do I know if they're saved? I'm not saying the guy's right or wrong. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'll take a rebuke. But I kind of like what he said. I knew what he meant. So don't take it totally literal. But what he said was, well, what do they talk about? What's their main theme in life? When they come over for Thanksgiving, do they talk about Christ? I mean, does he come up at least once? And she said, and remember I told you about that girl from Hawaii when I lived in Atlanta. She asked me the same question. And I said the same thing. I stole it from Paul Washer. And I said, well, what do they talk about? She said, well, you don't have to talk about Christ? She said, no. I said, that doesn't concern you? She said, no. I mean, they got saved in church. I know my ex-husband, she was a widow, led them to Christ. So I said, well, why don't you get on the phone tonight, call them up and find out? Because that sounds odd to me, She called them up, all three of them said, we don't want nothing to do with that mess.
Wow.
Yeah, but she was thinking that because they, did an altar call, that guaranteed it. And by the way, people get saved at altar calls. I am not against altar calls, and I'm not against the sinner's prayer. But I'm not quick to throw it out. I got to know they're ready. I'm in the middle. Not against it like the Calvinists, but I'm not going to do the shotgun approach like they did out there one church here in town I used to go to where they get 20, 30 kids saved in the morning service. Yeah, really? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope they're right. So in summary, 3 quick points. The world's shaking. It's shaking, and I hate to use a colloquial phrase, and shaking and grooving, as we said in the 70s. Things are going on. If we're not right there, we are either in the birth pains or we are in the pre-birth pains. Either way, we're close, right? So we have to recognize we're in a spiritual war. This war, and it's intensifying. I'll tell you some stuff if I had time to really you'd find interesting. So how do we deal with it? Instead of getting beat down and negative and look at the world, and I do that sometimes. I do. We need to be excited. When I see this stuff, it excites me. Not in a sadistic, mean way, like well, I'm glad they're suffering over in Ethiopia. But what I mean is my salvation draws nigh. Right? Love that old King James word, nigh. Isn't that a beautiful word? Nigh. It's like in Spanish. My favorite word in Spanish is mañana. I love it.
Word too, bro.
Mine. Not because I'm going to do it tomorrow. It just sounds, it's such a smooth world, isn't it? Mañana. Best word in the Spanish language, mañana. But these old King James words, I thought about making a list one day and learning them all and speaking them because I just like the way, draw nigh, quicken. I love that. The Spirit's quickened. These are God's words, man. Pure, godly words. That's why, by the way, quick another insert. There's a book out there called Sealed by the King. If you don't own this book, you better get it. This is these young fundamental Baptist guys coming up, smart kids. Slick kids, man. This guy, he did a study of, we're using AI, the number 7 in the King James Bible. If you have any doubt the King James Bible is not the Word of God, and he's on YouTube. You can listen to him on YouTube. I love these young kids coming up. They're polished, and they're smart, way smarter than me. They can do everything. AI, like little art. I mean, they know all that. That brother wrote a book. Smart, and I couldn't even understand half the mathematical stuff he's talking about, and I have an engineering degree. I mean, he's a smart kid. And he found, it's just bizarre, the number 7, beginning 7. I can't remember it all, but when you're done, you'll have no doubt with this. God put his fingerprint on that King James Bible. So we got to get busy for the Lord. And the last, I'm not going to look it up, I promise, my last phrase. I was going to read Proverbs 24:16. Brothers and sisters, if you have fallen, get up. Bible says a righteous man will stand up 7 times. Right? Every day if you fall, get back up. But keep in mind our goal, and me and Minnow are guilty of this. We'll be honest. We'll get on that phone and moan together about it. But I realized the other day I got to stop doing that. Because all I'm doing is making an excuse. I'm getting on, Minnow, brother, I'm so sick of my sin. And, woe is me. I think God's like, okay, get in the game and cut this nonsense out. It's time to clean all that mess up. Clean up what we watch, clean up what we listen to, clean up how we act, clean up who we hang out with, clean up how we talk, and get busy. And that's my message for the day. Take it for what it is. And if I said anything to anybody to offend them, it wasn't my intentions. I honestly, when I say I'm preaching to myself, I really mean it. All righty.
I'm sick of your sin too, my brother.
I don't blame you, man. Oh, I had a guy approach me in Kerrville recently at a get together, a Christian guy, and he said to me, he goes, brother, I got something to talk to you about. And I said, oh no, here we go. He says, I've seen you in traffic. Seen you. I knew exactly what he was about to say, because that's one of my weaknesses, because I'm always in a hurry. I work from home, I run to lunch, I got to pay this, got to pay that. I'm on the phone with this guy, he's in a hurry. I just missed an exit. My life's crazy. So sometimes in Kerrville is a retirement community. Everybody drives 5 miles an hour, and I'm like, and he said he saw me. He goes, you don't act like a Christian when you're in traffic, do you? And I didn't get mad at him. I got a rule. If you come to me in a good spirit, you can question my salvation. You can tell me I'm living. I want to know. You have my permission to call me if you see something in my life. Please do your job and tell me I'm living wrong or I need to question my salvation, whatever it be. So I didn't get mad at the guy. I said, you're right. You're right. I thank you for telling me. And I have been working on that. I'm really working on that. I think I have slipped a couple times, but I want to get to that pure level of Never happening. I just need to slow down and realize this is worldly stuff at the end of the day. Just drive slow, be Christian-like, and, listen to some preaching and chill out.
You drive